What secret did you find out about someone that permanently changed the way you looked at them? There is an engineering professional at my workplace that likes to wear pricey articles of clothing. He even sports a Breitling wristwatch, priced from $3,000 to over $17,000, as his work timepiece. Turns out that he and his wife are buried beneath a mountain of credit card debt, and while I do not look down my nose at him, I definitely view his attire and accessories differently knowing that fact. Damn, I felt like I was splurging when I bought my $150 watch. Same man, and it was marked down to $100 when I bought it. There was this one girl I'd known for a long time, but wasn't massively close to, who we all thought was being terribly controlled by her boyfriend. She would tell us that he decided when you was allowed to drink, when she was allowed to go out, what she was allowed to do, etc. And that he hid things around the house, and that he had started to impose bedtimes for her and shout at her over what seemed like extremely minor things. We all thought he was awful and encouraged her to leave. Then she moved in with me, and I realized she was extremely emotionally unstable and an alcoholic. Within months, I found myself wanting to do, or in some cases actually doing, all the things she said her controlling boyfriend had done. I remember one time, after trying to remain patient with her for a while, she said one thing that was relatively minor, and it was the last straw. I just snapped and screamed at her. I then got phone calls from all our mutual friends to talk about my behavior and anger management, presumably as a result of the story being told back to them in a somewhat biased way. So, in a way, her secret changed my opinion of him. Edit. Didn't expect this to gain traction, and the ex-boyfriend is picking up more sympathy than he deserves below. So to make myself feel better about that, I'll add a few more details. While I did gain an understanding of much of his controlling behavior and had a much less black and white view of him and of their relationship, he was no saint. He was very far from it, in fact. For instance, he had been physically violent with her, and this was corroborated by others. There were plenty of times I got so angry I felt like raising a hand to her, and I walked away to calm down. There is never an excuse to actually hit someone. What I would say is that they were both abusive, but I had a much less black and white view of both of them after getting to know her better. A friend I grew up started dating a guy and quickly got pregnant and married at 25 or so. One night, hanging out with her and her husband, he's like, "Did she ever tell you how we met?" Apparently she was an escort since right after she turned 18. He was one of her Johns, but they took a liking to one another. They've since been divorced. Here's a positive one. My wife, a defense attorney, has a work colleague who is the biggest asshole you will ever meet. A blowhard who revels in winning at any cost and brags about the snarky things he does to really twist the knife. He's known as a sharp legal mind, but I get the sense that he likes to try to screw weaker adders or other counselors and loves it when he catches them in some technicality. He makes all those stereotypes about lawyers seem valid. My church had a sort of Habitat for Humanity-esque service weekend, where we were rehabbing an old warehouse into a new space as a temporary women's shelter for battered women. The offices were already up, but the individual rooms needed to be refloored, the bathrooms retiled, sheetrock needed to be hung and primed. To my surprise, I saw the asshole there with a tool belt helping to install a sink. Long story short, he donates his legal services to that one shelter, helping to set up restraining orders, divorces, custody, etc. for abused women trying to get away from their abusive partners/family. At first I wondered if this was some sort of court-ordered community service. It wouldn't surprise me if he had done something to deserve it and then pissed off a judge somewhere. But no, the coordinator for the shelter who was working with my church says that he had been doing that for the past few years. Apparently his wife's previous husband was an abuser, and he has a real heart for people in that situation. Edit. I don't know if that's really a secret, but my wife didn't know about it and didn't believe me when I told her. He obviously doesn't brag about it, which is something I thought he would totally do. It only slightly changed my perception, but I was about 9/10 when my dad told me why he and my mum split up. His exact words in a sad tone were she was seeing another man. He wouldn't tell me who it was. From now on, every time an affair is mentioned, I'd give a quick glance to my mum. She still doesn't know I know. There was a guy I worked with that was kinda handsy, but generally really nice all the time. I learned he was gay, but in the closet. It was then I started noticing how he treated everyone else. Kinda douchey. He isn't handsy with anyone else. So all the positive attention was him trying to flirt, I guess. He was not very good at it. I had a conversation with him when he asked me to lunch. I had to awkwardly explain that I'm married, etc. I feel like I may have accidentally led him on. I feel a little bad about it, but I wore my ring every day and I have pictures of my family on my desk. We are still on friendly terms and I introduced him to my circle of gay bro friends to help him acclimate to the culture. We became decent enough friends, but a lot of the flirt-like behavior stopped. Very nice of you to do that. You're a good mate. That my friend from middle school was in the witness protection program and his last name was fake. I read that as his last name was fake and thought immediately, why the hell would they draw attention to it by making his last name fake? Hi, I'm Michael Fake. I'm not running on all cylinders. As a kid I used to spend a lot of time playing computer games with my neighbor. One day I caught him pressing the caps lock key each time he wanted to capitalize a letter. Told him the shift key did the same job, which led him to a 15-minute tirade about how the caps lock button was better. We've drifted apart since. There was a woman whom I considered my friend for many years. She had cancer, survived it, but it was still there and created many problems. She even appeared on TV shows as an advocate for cancer patients, did a lot of political activism, was very much opposed to euthanasia, published some books. Then one fine day, through a series of coincidences, it turned out that her cancer had never existed. She had completely made it up. A big fat whopping lie. I would feel ashamed because I fell for it for so long. Except that a lot of other people fell for it too, including professionals, doctors, nurses, priests. Needless to say, it ended that friendship. And it made me think a lot about how easily fooled we all are. There was this guy in my high school who was the typical big meathead football player bully, picking fights, playing mean-spirited pranks, super homophobic and misogynistic. He was something straight out of a teen movie. My senior year he ended up in my English class. At the end of the year we had to do senior statements, which basically are speeches where you talk about a very painful / life-changing event you've been through. He got up and began to tell a heart-wrenching story about how he and his brother have been abused by his father since they were children. He hates football and wishes he could do drama like he wants, but his father would never allow it. He acknowledged what an asshole he is and was besides himself for not knowing how to treat others. He quietly went back to his seat where he proceeded to cry quietly for the remainder of the class. His story radically changed my opinion of him. He was the first person who made me realize most people do deserve compassion. He still lives in my hometown and occasionally I find him at the bar downtown. He's a good guy, much quieter now, but hopefully pursuing something he loves because he deserves the happiness. Not necessarily a secret, but I was 8 years old, it was Christmas, and our family was over at a friend's acreage for Christmas Eve. I was sitting on my dad's lap, and I placed my hand up against his to compare size, and to my utter shock and horror, I noticed that my dad was missing a finger, his pinky finger. My mom and dad were confused. You never noticed that? He's been missing his finger your entire life. No, I hadn't ever noticed it, and it was actually a bit too much to handle for an 8-year-old at the time. I was absolutely devastated. In actuality, he lost his thumb while working on the oil rigs, and they transplanted his pinky finger to where his thumb would be so that he still had some sort of grasping abilities. Pretty cool, but freaked me out so badly as a kid. So weird, but a similar thing happened to me. I was 9, and a friend of mine showed my dad her magic trick, where she could take off her thumb and put it back on. You know the lame trick I'm talking about. Well, my dad goes, yeah, I can do that too, and shows her his pinky. There's only half a pinky there. We were both amazed. Finally, she says, seriously, how did you do that? My dad says, oh, the other half is in a coal mine somewhere. He had half a pinky for about 15 years and well, before I was born. Blew my mind. My dad thought it was weird that I didn't know. I wonder how much longer I would have gone without knowing if it wasn't for my friend's bad trick. Had an ex. He was one of those "I'm so gentle and kind you woo, I love pastel colors and flower crowns you woo" types, who went on to date a friend of mine. This friend goes on to tell me they broke up because he admitted to getting sexual with his dog on multiple occasions and asked if my friend wanted to watch him jack off that dog on Skype call. I was like, damn dude, I just broke up with him because he was freaking annoying. WTF as you woo? Edit. Wow. I wish I hadn't asked. A emoticon. Not really important. Not important, but related, as people who use emotes like that are 100% always furries.